For years, Palestinian terror groups have murdered countless Israeli civilians. But what most people don't know is they've also killed and injured dozens of Americans.
And now there's a movement to have those Palestinians face justice here in the United States. But as Eric Stakelbeck reports, the hardest part may be getting Washington to take action.
When Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit was released by his Hamas kidnappers last fall after years of captivity, many Israelis cheered. Yet Israel paid a heavy price in the deal. Over 1,000 hardened Palestinian terrorists were exchanged for Shalit, including some who were involved in the murder of American citizens.
We know of at least 15 terrorists who were released who were involved in attacks with American casualties.
U.S. citizen Alan Bauer and his young son were among those casualties. In 2002, they were seriously wounded by a Palestinian suicide bomber in Jerusalem. Bauer says 2 of the planners of that attack were released as part of the Shalit deal, as were others who've been involved in attacking Americans. At least 54 U.S. citizens have been killed by Palestinian terror attacks since 1993. Another 83 have been wounded, some seriously. The attacks have targeted American tourists, students, and expatriates living in Israel or the Palestinian areas. Alam Tamimi helped mastermind the deadly bombing of a Sbarro's pizzeria in Jerusalem that killed 15 people in 2001. Among those murdered was New Jersey schoolteacher Shoshana Greenbaum. Tamimi, who was released in the Shalit deal, now lives in Jordan and is unrepentant about her actions.
So you feel sorry?
لا
بالمرة؟
نهائيا. لماذا؟
We have an extradition treaty with Jordan. If America wanted to get this woman and have her stand justice, we could.
Sarah Stern is president of the Endowment for Middle East Truth in Washington. She says the U.S. government is not following through on cases involving Palestinian terrorists.
There's a 1990 anti-terrorism law that says that any time an America is killed anywhere in the world, we have the right to retrieve that suspect and have him stand justice.
When it became clear that wasn't happening, Stern helped push through legislation on Capitol Hill that would bring justice to American families affected by Palestinian terrorism. That led to the Department of Justice opening an office devoted to American victims of overseas terrorism. Yet in the 7 years since that office opened here at DOJ, not one Palestinian who's been involved in terror against Americans has been extradited or even indicted to face justice in the U.S. In recent years, the U.S. has extradited a Somali pirate, al-Qaeda members, and several Israeli citizens who were involved in drug trafficking and internet fraud, but no Palestinian terrorists. A Justice Department spokesman told CBN News that DOJ is committed to the principle that those involved in terror attacks against U.S. citizens anywhere in the world must be brought to justice, whether in the U.S. or elsewhere. Bauer isn't convinced.
The U.S. government's decided that extraditing Palestinian terrorists would hurt its reputation with the Palestinian people, with the Arab street, and as such it has made no real effort.
He hopes that will change. Along with other victims of Palestinian terror, Bauer recently sent a letter to Attorney General Eric Holder urging him to bring their attackers to justice. Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Eric. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you have to recognize what one of the candidates said in the debate. It was highly criticized, but it's the truth, that this Palestine thing is a fiction. There is no historic nation of Palestine, and these people are not Palestinian as such. They're Arabs who have come into what was historically Israel, and they've set up shop there, and they've lived for a number of years, and now there's terrorism among them, and the Palestine Liberation Organization was a front established by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And we have to recognize, and they have done the unspeakable things to their own people, and they're doing it to us. And so we worry so much about what the Arab street thinks. I think it's a fiction. And it's time the United States stand up for the rights of its own citizens and not have them kidnapped, tortured, beaten, and killed. Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories in the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Pat, the media often frame abortion as a women's rights issue, yet women are the ones who are leading the fight against abortion. That was clear at a Washington gala that Paul Strand attended.
This bash was put on by the Susan B. Anthony List, a network of 1/3 of a million women pushing for female pro-life politicians. Marjorie Dannenfelser leads it.
The truth is that, number one, women are at the helm of the pro-life movement at this point.
These female-led groups point out the majority of women are pro-life, and it's because so many believe abortion actually harms women.
People keep flocking in our direction as women themselves are speaking up to talk about how much the abortion experience damaged them, how much they regret that decision.
Radio personality Mary Catherine Ham emceed the event. She joked that pro-choice feminists have insisted that liberated women can only believe what liberals believe.
You have all the freedom in the world. And they said, you can stand between here and here. We choose to stand somewhere different.
Senator Marco Rubio spoke. His latest pro-life cause is trying to undo a new Obamacare order that all employers, including religious ones, must pay for contraception, even the kind that aborts the unborn.
So this administration, in an outrageous overreach, is basically saying that their policy aims are more important than the religious liberties guaranteed by our Constitution.
New York Congresswoman Anne Marie Buerkle received the highest award of the evening, but she turned right around and told the pro-life audience,
"You support women in a crisis pregnancy and the crisis pregnancy centers. You help them and you help support their unborn children. And once the babies are born, you are the heroes."
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
The White House plans to end combat operations in Afghanistan next year. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta says U.S. forces will then focus on training and supporting the Afghan army. Other countries are looking to speed up their withdrawals from Afghanistan as well. The current NATO strategy calls for a withdrawal of all combat troops by 2014. Pat?
Well, you know, the truth is, as soon as we pull out, the Taliban is going to take over. They're allied very closely with the ISI in Pakistan, and the Pakistani generals are sympathetic to it. I mean, after all, they hid Osama bin Laden in that Abbottabad military installation. Here he is, the wanted criminal terrorist, and he's right in the middle of their military installation. They are going to link up with the Taliban, and they will take back over Afghanistan, and all the treasure and lives that we have spent there will have been wasted. And the thing of it is, the American people don't want to hang around there any longer, and I can't say I blame them. And we have a corrupt president in Afghanistan. Karzai is weak and corrupt. And we have done nothing to eliminate that enormous amount of opium. The opium poppies grow out in plain sight, thousands of acres of the things that we could have eradicated, and we didn't do it because it might upset the Afghan farmers. I mean, so on and on and on, but it's an exercise in futility, and I salute the brave men and women who've been there, and you think of the danger and the damage and the horrible scars in their lives, and you ask yourself, for what? And you wish you could say it's for the defense of freedom, and it is just because they're brave Americans, period. Lee?
Pat, Indiana has become the nation's latest right-to-work state. The new law there allows workers to opt out of paying union fees. The Indiana Senate passed the measure in a 28-22 vote. Thousands, as you see here, took to the streets outside the State House to protest, but Governor Mitch Daniels immediately signed the bill into law. 22 other states have similar laws. Indiana is the first, though, in the nation's so-called Rust Belt. Sugar is as dangerous as alcohol and tobacco and should be taxed and regulated. That's the conclusion from a group of researchers at the University of California, San Francisco. They published their views in the science journal Nature. They say sugar is a cause of some of the worst diseases, including cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. And they say a little is not a problem, but a lot kills, slowly. Some lawmakers have considered measures to deal with sugar, like taxes on soft drinks, but many analysts argue there are other causes for diseases, like a lack of physical activity. George Beverly Shea turns 103 today. Shea, of course, is known as America's beloved gospel singer. He performed at Billy Graham crusades for more than 60 years, and it's estimated he sang live before 220 million people. Shea won a Lifetime Grammy Award 2 years ago. He plans to celebrate today with his wife and family at his home in Montreat, North Carolina. That, by the way, is where Billy Graham lives. Jay has said his secret to long life is, quote, the Lord, a good wife, and coffee. Now, Pat, I know you would agree with the first two of those at least, wouldn't you?
Lord, good wife, and the thing about George Beverly Shea is he is so placid. He's just such a nice guy. He doesn't get mad at people. He just wants to live for the Lord, and I think coffee might set him on edge a little bit, but if he thinks coffee doesn't...
No, I just want to say I'm totally with George Beverly Shea, and coffee doesn't set you off. Coffee is like a wonderful thing.
A fragrance, nectar of the gods from Mount Olympus.
Said it.
Okay, well...
From your lips to God's ears, right?
We will celebrate 100 together. All right.
An American missionary couple have been killed in Mexico. John and Wanda Casillas had lived in Mexico for over 30 years. John was a Baptist preacher, and together the couple ran a church in Santiago. Loved ones say drug cartels made living in the area dangerous, but their love for the Mexican people made them stay.
There's no doubt that they're going to be remembered as martyrs. I mean, they've lived for God. They died in the battlefield for God.
The couple were killed during an apparent robbery. A safe and electronics are missing from their home. The murders marked the second slaying of American missionaries in that region in the last year. A federal court is backing a Christian counseling student who wanted to refer a gay client to another counselor. Eastern Michigan University expelled Julia Ward from its counseling program 3 years ago after she made the request due to religious convictions. Now the U.S. Sixth Court of Appeals has reversed a lower court's judgment and is allowing Ward to argue her religious discrimination case before a Detroit-based federal jury. The university says it dismissed Ward because her referral request violated the American Counseling Association's Code of Ethics. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.